What's up, guys? Got a 1995 Toyota Camry here, and it was it's a crank no start at this point. That's how the car came to me. It was a bad battery, so we lost some of the codes, I guess, with the battery swap. The customer told me the car would start sometimes, and it will just stall after 10 minutes. So to me, I was like, man, I'm thinking probably because the fuel is good and everything. This is going to be a crankshaft sensor. But anyway, so I told him he went to get one from the junkyard. Haven't had time to go and tear it into this thing to do that. So I just wanted to test it out myself quickly. So the way to retrieve the codes, you have to jumper two pins, T1 and E1. T1 as in Tom, E as in Edward 1. When you jumper those pins, you're going to see the check engine light flashing. So I got code 14, which is basically ignition signal. Something has a circuit problem. So I decided, because my gut feeling, of course, was the crank. Because when I crank it, I don't see the RPM, move. So maybe it's a bad RPM gauge. Who knows? So how do I prove that I actually do not have an RPM signal? I decided to go with the first available injector. So that'll be injector number 1. And what I have done here, because the wires are so hard and brittle, even the weather back, you can't even poke it or poke through it with the probes. So I've used these piercing probes on the wiring, as you see. One for the feed and one for the switch inside. Right now you can see the switch inside is grounded when the car is off. That's what the light is off. The other light was actually off earlier. Now we have some type of current, very dim. This is supposed to be the constant feed. Once you turn the key on, in the on position, you have a constant feed right there. So early on it didn't have a light. Now it has a small feed. So anyway, maybe the computer needs to go to sleep. Maybe that's why we still have that. I have no idea. But all I want to see is, I want to see this red light. I want to see it flicker, like being switched on and off. So I have it on power, like positive, right? And go into that switching side. So the way you differentiate it is because you see that all of the injector will have a common wire. On this model, it looks like a red and pink wire. So that's going to be a constant feed, right? Then you have the switching side, which was the control side. And the control side, that's where I have my red test light on. The other one is a constant feed. Now let's go inside the car and let's prove it. Like I said, I was already guessing just because of what he described of the symptoms. Then when the car got here, I cranked it with the RPM gauge. It's not moving. So I was kind of going there until I got the code 14. That kind of threw me off, so I had to do this. Now look at the light. There you go. Very bright light. So this is a constant feed for all of the injectors. So that fuse is perfectly fine. Now what do we have left? We have that other test light now went to nothing. Remember, it was grounded when the car was off. Now the car is on, there's no more ground there, because the computer now has to take over and give it that ground. So we're gonna crank it and see what happens, and see also if our constant feed is being maintained while cranking. Let's go. You see it flicker the first time? That was it, nothing else. That was it. It had a brief flicker, very brief. See that? Now back to that when the car is off. Car's on there. All right, so clearly, if you don't have computer control on an injector, you can safely assume that you don't have a crank signal. So it can be due to a timing belt that is failed, right? The engine is no longer in time, or it can be of a bad crankshaft position sensor. So that's what I'm leaning towards in this case. I just don't feel like doing the job right now. So what other tests can I do right now to further prove my case? What other tests can I do? I mean, essentially I can do the same test with the injector, with the ignition coil, for example. But I'm not going to go there. What I want to see now is, because some cars, funny enough, the crankshaft sensor has a fuse for some cars. So let me check if this one is the same. If not, does it have a blown fuse somewhere, or a relay that's not functioning properly? I mean, this is just like I said before we go into tearing into this thing, which seems to me like it's going to be inevitable. So these are something we don't care about, these fuses. They don't do nothing for us, just the AC and the fan fuses. I mean, relay. So this relay is not going to help us. So put that back. Let's go into this fuse relay box here. What do we have here? So here we have got an EFI relay, which is very important because the EFI relay turns on all of these things. So we got to make sure that this relay here works. Right here, the EFI relay. What else we have? The ECU relays and all these things, which I think they're working, but we're going to check all of them just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to retrieve my testing equipment from this side. Okay. I no longer need that for now. Now we're going to go to ground. Make sure we got good connection here. Let me turn the ignition on. All right, come on, baby. All right, ignition is on. Now let's go and test this relay. This fuse is out, and that relay has to be tested. So the EFI, what else we got? Spare OBD alternator, EFI 15 ampere right here. One side good, the other side also good, right? So that's the EFI fuse. All right, we have another one. Sometimes they have a couple. Let's check. You know what? Let's just check all of them. So we eliminate any type of Alright. And the last fuse is the horn, doesn't matter. The circuit only turned on. No, this was a horn. What is that? A headlight. So these two are headlight fuses. Right. Not sure why this one works. It shouldn't work when the headlight is not turned on, but whatever. This is the hazard light, and they all turned on for some reason on this car. Other cars are wired differently. This one is on even when they're not on. Alright, so the only thing now is the EFI relay as a variable for me, or the engine main relay. So I have to see if I can the EFI relay and the, what kind of relay is that? The fan, radiator fan relay, they kind of look alike. So I want to see if I can swap them. Hopefully they are the same relay design wise. And I can just swap them here. They look like they're, well, not really. No, they're not. That sucks for me. I really wanted to check that out, and I'm by myself here. See if I have somebody else to try to crank the car, I could test this relay to see if it's coming turning on at least, or trying to turn on, because I know I got but we can still do some testing anyway, so it's not hopeless. Let me put this one back here because it's unique. Alright, so we're going to test for power. Okay, we got a constant power there. We should have two powers. Power, so that's the fuse is good. We already know that. So now we have one ground that should be a constant one, and another one that is controlled by the computer. So let's go to these two sides now. Okay, we got a good ground there. Flickering ground. I don't like that. Okay, so this is the good ground right here. And this, I guess, will be the computer but it's flickering already, which is pretty strange there. I'm not sure why it does that. So it does click though, with a strong click actually. Yeah, you hear that? Okay. So what I want to see is there any way for me, but you need a second person. I was thinking of trying to pulsate the signal on the EFI. How would I determine the EFI is actually being commanded on? Or I can turn it on forcefully. I think I should be able to do that and see if it turns on. Let me turn this off. In fact, let me just try it first. Alright, what I'm going to do is just to eliminate that. I mean, I heard a click, but doesn't mean much. Clicking don't mean nothing. Remember that when it comes to relay, just because it's clicking doesn't mean it's working. So again, these are the, oh, sorry. All right. The constant ground is that one, and I have a constant power on one of these two pins. So essentially, if I jumper these two pins, I think I should be able to eliminate the variable of this thing right here. Hold on, guys, let me just locate these proper pins. All right, guys, so I decided to follow the flow charts. Kind of a lengthy process, but since it's coming from the manufacturer and this is an older car, I'm not really familiar with these cars. Anyway, led me to what? Basically testing the distributor as a possible culprit, because, and of course, my understanding was the distributor just takes care of the ignition side of it, but the camshaft position sensor, which I assume on this particular model has to have a signal, plausible signal for the computer, the ECM, to authorize ignition and control of the injectors. That could have been compromised because of the distributor, right? But the distributor is composed of many components, and the camshaft position sensor is just one of them. But anyway, in this instance, according to the flow charts, they want you to check this coil, which is inside of the distributor, as you can see, for a resistance right here between these two terminals, and also a resistance between that and that. And when I check the resistance, I get nothing. It's open, or out of limit, OL. So according to the flow charts, this coil is bad. And I'm still stuck because I'm not sure what the logic is, but why would this coil being bad disallow the computer to turn on the injectors? I mean, I can understand why somebody would make it like that, but I've never seen them like that. On the car, cars of later models, I guess. So I'm gonna post this video and somebody maybe can enlighten me, but anyway, I got to this. I measured the resistance between these two terminals and I get open out of limits. So matter of fact, I'm gonna go get my other multimeter just to be sure that I'm not misreading anything here. All right, so this is my second multimeter that I'm using, and I get the same test result. There's no no connection between the two. So basically this is ruptured internally. Now there's some damage. I'm not sure if the damage has anything to do with it. If you can notice that on this side here is cracked on either side of it. You see the crack right there? And there's another crack on the opposite side around there. So you see that? There's a crack there and then there's a crack there. Does that have anything to do with it? I'm not sure. But here we are. So now I gotta possibly try to go to the junkyard because again, I'm still not 100% convinced. I mean, I just followed the flow chart. I should be convinced, but so I'm probably going to go to the junkyard. So to just minimize the possibility of making a mistake on the expensive part potentially. And I'm trying to get myself another coil. Of course, I will take my multimeter to check the resistance on that particular coil, and hopefully it is within spec. And if it is, if I get a reading that I'm expecting, then I'll come and replace this coil and put it back together and see if the car will fire, and then we'll go from there. So, but so far, this is where my diagnosis has led me. Oh wow, look at that, guys. So I just removed the coil, right? So we know the coil has some issues, but look at the side of the coil. Look at that. It's almost like something was burnt or melting down there. Now when I look where the side corresponds to on the distributor side, look at that. Look like a capacitor that kind of failed. That's what it kind of looks like. I'm not sure what this piece is called, but it has the shape of a capacitor and it looked like it oozed out. So yeah, I think this is pretty toast. What do you think? Yeah, I think we need a distributor. I think that's where we're headed.